Hello, my name's Peter Woods. I recently caught up with Centralis MD Ewen Anderson to discuss desktop transformation. Ewen specialised in desktop and application delivery for 2 decades and was instrumental in the development of Centralis's strategic transformation consultancy. Ewen, I'm increasingly hearing the term desktop transformation. What is it? Is it just another term for desktop virtualisation?
Well, yes and no. I mean, transformation clearly is a process of dramatic change, and in desktop transformation, we're really talking about the way that organisations change the way that they deliver applications and desktops and personalisation to their users. So desktop virtualisation can play a part of that, but it's very much a technology angle on it. For us as a company, desktop transformation is more about the way in which an organisation approaches that change and ensures that that change to a more dynamic desktop model is efficient and effective and delivered in a way which doesn't disrupt the organisation.
But aren't some of the vendors using the term desktop transformation to refer to what are essentially desktop virtualisation technologies?
I think that's perfectly fair. Many vendors pick up on terms and they use them as they become widely used in the industry, and they associate them with their particular technologies. I think it's important to look at what the process is rather than the technology. So for us, desktop transformation is really about aligning the process of change with the organization's strategy, with their aims and objectives, with the way that they interact with their users, the way that they manage their information technology, and the way that technology is designed and delivered. So transformation is a much wider exercise than a single technology or indeed set of vendors' products. It's a way of organising and delivering successful change.
So why all of a sudden the great need for change now?
I think there's 2 main things that are driving a change in the way that organisations interact with their users. One is that information technology has really become fundamental to the way that almost everybody does their job. So whereas it was an infrastructure that was used by people intermittently, it's now become core to the majority of people in the way that they do their role, and indeed plays a part in the role of almost everybody at some point in the working day. So on the one side, the requirement to use it has dramatically increased. On the other side, the way that users feel about the technology and what they expect from it has changed considerably. So if we look back, say, 20 years, then the user experience of technology was very much the green screen terminal on the desk, centralized data, centralized systems, with the only interaction with the user being the input of data into those systems. Now, we introduced email and personal productivity and the personal computer into that equation, but still fundamentally it was a business tool. And then really about probably 5 years ago, consumer electronics has caught up with some of those business devices. So first laptops and then netbooks and tablets and smartphones have really changed the user perception of IT from something that they use at work to do a job to a more desirable device and way of working, and something that's they have personal experience of in the home. And I think that expectation of a device that works every time, reliably, is simple to use and is very pleasant, is sometimes at odds with the computing experience that they have when they get to work. So there's a real challenge from IT to support the business requirements of delivering them those fundamental systems with a user's expectation that that computing device will actually be personal, lightweight, always on, easy to access.
Okay, so there's some fairly compelling reasons to change. Why then wouldn't organisations change the way they're delivering the desktop?
I think it's really to do with the difficulty of changing at the desktop level. The last big upgrade that most organisations did was to Windows XP, and that took place many years ago. So there is a difficulty of changing at that desktop level because it directly impacts the user and it directly affects their productivity. So the process of change is inherently more difficult and more risky for the organisation than many of the other changes they might have undertaken recently. Virtualization has been very well adopted. It's been very successful for most organisations, very cost effective, reducing power, consolidating devices, and is very much sort of accepted as an industry norm now. But that's very much at the server virtualization level in the data center. And most users don't perceive the change that's happened to them when server virtualization takes place. When we move to the application and desktop then we're directly impacting what the user experiences. So that change is much more fundamental. It needs to be planned very carefully from a user impact perspective rather than purely a technology perspective. So it needs a strong methodology to back that up.
Okay, so how can organisations overcome this challenge in affecting a transformation?
It's really about understanding what the organisation is seeking to achieve by the desktop transformation. So it's aligning the process of change with the business objectives and with a strong communication strategy within the organisation to ensure that the users understand why the change is taking place.
And what they'll get from it, I guess.
And what they'll get from it, yes. There has to be user benefits, and a lot of what we do as an organisation is about articulating those benefits both to the organisation and helping the organisation to articulate that to the users. So it's about that strong methodology. It's about understanding the process of change, and that change requires that understanding of the strategy, the people, the process, and indeed of the technology itself. And by having that structured and methodology-driven approach to change, then you can affect change within the organisation.
So it's challenging, but with the right process and the right skills, it's achievable. What are the implications of not transforming your desktop?
I think with IT becoming so fundamental for organisations and the way they operate, there really isn't an option for organisations not to change. The demands around the use of IT are not just user-driven. They're also driven by the needs of the organisation to be flexible, to continue operating even in times of sort of business continuity events like strikes, transport disruptions, severe weather, etc. So if an organisation does not move towards a more agile way of delivering their applications and desktops, they'll be restricted in the way that they're able to react to those events, but also restricted in some of the more flexible ways of working that are available from a transformed desktop. For example, home working, flexible working, work-life balance type issues can significantly affect staff recruitment and retention, and a more flexible approach to desktop delivery certainly helps with those. But also new ways of working around shared services, around business partnerships and shared enterprise become much, much easier to deliver if there's a more flexible approach to that application and desktop delivery. And fundamentally, the desktop transformation underpins the ability of the organisation to work flexibly. So choosing not to change restricts the organisation's ability to work effectively.
That's great. Thanks, Ewen.
You're welcome, Peter.
To learn more about successful desktop transformation and de-risking change through strategic transformation consultancy, call 01564 795911 or email cio@centralis.co.uk.